How's everybody doing? It's about 12:45 in the morning, Monday night going into Tuesday morning. So the insomnia is kicking in. So obviously, scrolling through the app today, I saw that creator Joey Swole, who is not somebody who I've ever followed. I know it will be shocking to people that I don't prioritize fitness content in my YouTube feed. I mean, yeah, he used the term colored athletes. And I have not heard that word used in that way in quite some time. But it definitely took me back to my childhood. And, and specifically to my grandparents on both sides, who routinely used that word when I was a little kid. And I, I grew up hearing that word, colored, used in that way. I mean, like 4, 5, 6, 7 years old when I was a little kid. And again, it's like I've already mentioned in several of my prior videos that when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, that was the 70s and the 80s. And I was in pretty rural areas of Ohio. And I didn't know any black people. Not until I got into in the fifth grade, and there was a biracial kid in the fourth grade, my brother's grade, and of course the two of them became absolute best friends. And bear in mind, fourth grade, 9 years old, and my brother and his buddy were in the principal's office constantly because other kids would call my brother's friend the N word at recess and things like that. And my brother's friend would beat the shit out of him. uh, but, you know, at the time, my brother's friend was the only black kid in our entire school system in rural Ohio. But it just, and again, it's like my impression from knowing my grandparents as well as I did, especially my dad's folks. They were farmers. My grandpa was a farmer. Uh, my grandma had been a nurse and, was basically a housewife when she raised my dad and his sister. And then, she took care of my brother and I during the summers when we'd be up there. That woman was a saint and did not have a malicious bone in her entire body. But they still said colored, like all the time. It was a frequent thing. And again, it's like I don't think it was anything that was malicious, especially for those two, for my grandma and grandpa. Um, and so that's why I didn't make any videos like commenting on that today, because I had to think about that for a bit. Not because I don't think that what Joey Swole said was wrong. My initial reaction to that was, Jesus Christ, dude, it's 2025 and you're a young man. And when I was hearing that, it was literally 50 years ago. It was 50 years ago in rural, segregated Ohio. It was not 2025 in the diverse and multicultural society that we have now, despite the hatred that so many in this country have for that. And it's the age of TikTok and social media and going viral and things like that. Um, I don't know if time and context matter in this context. Uh, I don't know because I've also said many many times that simply because of how and where I was born, I am afforded unearned, unearned. I am afforded pretty much every single privilege that this country has to offer except for generational wealth. And so internally, it's like sometimes when stuff like this pops up, um, sometimes I hesitate to say anything publicly. And not just because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to come on the internet being all confident and find out that I'm just being dumb. And I don't want to do or say anything that'll be insensitive to other people, which I've done before. There was a Jazzy Chair video that I posted a couple of years ago that I thought was hilarious that constituted my very first public apology on the internet. And that was an experience that I learned a great deal from. But I also learned that I don't want to learn those kinds of lessons that publicly because it's unpleasant. It's incredibly unpleasant. I'm not really sure where I'm going with this other than to say I saw that guy's video and it took me right back to my childhood. And when I would hear that word used that way on a very regular basis from people who I loved dearly and to this day love dearly and still miss terribly, and still just have an incredible amount of respect for and love for my grandparents, two of the best people I've ever known in my entire life. And but this component existed. And again, I don't believe from them anyway, I do not in a million years believe there was any malevolence or ill intent on their part. I mean, they were World War II generation, man. World War II generation in rural Ohio. Um, you know, and again, I mean, we weren't in the deep south. We were north central Ohio. We were an hour and a half away from Lake Erie in Canada. This wasn't Alabama. And and part of it is like I don't ever in a million years want to think about my grandma and grandpa as being racist. And I really do not, to my core, I do not believe that they were. I mean, they were just, my grandma was one of the most loving people I've ever met in my entire life and was the absolute perfect grandma for me to have as a little boy. But this was there. This was there. And it's just messy and complicated. But at the same time, it's not. It's not messy and complicated at all when it comes to somebody like Joey Swole because it's July 2025. If you can't progress from 1975 to 2025 and understand these things, it's just like, what the fuck, dude? So he's getting appropriately roasted. And then there's the whole cancel culture thing. And yeah, that's another issue, but complicated